In this video, I want to help you save yourself from yourself. Okay, not quite like that. I'm going to cover 5 methods that you can incorporate into your life to help you manage your spending a lot better. For each method, I'm going to describe what it is, who it's for, and also the psychology behind why it works. Plus, I'll help you incorporate it into your life. Now, even though this video is geared towards people who tend to overspend money or who have self-proclaimed bad spending habits, I think that anyone watching can learn from it, so I hope you stick around. For those new here, hello and welcome. My name is Lissa Prudencio. I'm a personal finance expert and accredited financial counselor, and I am the co-host of Net Podcast, a podcast where we talk about everything from our weddings worth it to our financial advisors worth it. So check it out and let me know what you guys think. So I went from a really bad YOLO type of spending habits in my 20s to now smarter financial decisions in my 30s. These 5 methods that I'm going to talk about in this video are all things that I've incorporated into my own life. They are just habits now. I don't even have to think about them, but I want to share them with you in case they help. I truly believe a lot has changed for me in terms of making financial decisions. I feel way smarter about them and way more confident. So the first method or trick that you can use to save yourself from yourself is the 48-hour rule. Low-key, you can make it any time-based rule you want, but this is a very popular one. It's very simple. If you are about to make a non-essential purchase, so non-essential means like you're going shopping at the mall, you're at the electronics store, you're making a purchase that's not directly tied to your health and basic necessities. If you are about to make a non-essential purchase, wait 48 hours before making the purchase. What you got to do there is find the willpower to leave the item behind and not purchase it. You can remind yourself that you can always come back in a few days later if you decide you still want it, if you actually want it or need it later on. There's nothing timely about it. Now, if you are shopping from the comfort of your own home, which a lot of us do these days because online shopping is so accessible, what this means is if you happen to add items to your cart or if you're browsing, then you need to not purchase them. Don't go to the checkout until at least 48 hours have passed. So I mentioned you can do any amount of time. Some people do 72 hours, some people do 1 whole week, but pick any amount of time that works for you that is going to be easy to incorporate as a rule in your life. Any amount of time that helps you curb a potential impulse purchase is going to work. So who is this method great for? Well, impulsive spenders, those of you who tend to spend impulsively, right? It's not something that you planned, but you see it, you want it, so you pull out the credit card. This also works for emotional spenders, so people who resort to retail therapy as a means to feel better. Some people like to shop and buy things to cope with certain emotions. Sometimes that's stress, boredom, anger, sadness, just buying things to feel better. And this is also great for regretful spenders. So people who constantly ask themselves later on, why did I even buy this? Right? Like if you tend to regret things that you've purchased, then it won't hurt you to think a little bit harder about whether you want something before you spend money on it. So if you fall into any of those buckets, it's pretty obvious why this 48-hour rule might be able to help you. It's because this delay of time allows for more rational thinking to kick in. That time for thinking makes sure that before you pull out your money, before you pull out your credit card, that you are actually aligning your spending with your financial priorities, as opposed to buying something for another reason, like we said, like retail therapy or something else. So let's talk about the psychology behind this rule and why it can help with impulsive spending. So impulsive spending has a lot to do with dopamine. Dopamine is a hormone and neurotransmitter that is produced in the brain as well as other parts of the body. You've probably heard of it before and know that people refer to it as the feel-good hormone. And that's because dopamine is involved in our feelings of pleasure, of satisfaction, of motivation. Dopamine specifically causes us to pursue things and crave things outside of ourselves. One big example is buying things. But it wasn't always about buying things. From an evolutionary standpoint, dopamine has historically been beneficial for the evolution of humans. It motivates humans to seek things beyond themselves. Back in the day, if humans were motivated to seek food, like hunting and gathering, then they'd have food to survive. Same with seeking out mates or finding tribes to be a part of. So long story short, everyone has a baseline of dopamine in their body. Now what happens after we have a surge of dopamine is we feel those really good feelings like pleasure and satisfaction. And then afterwards, when we come back down to our baseline, which is normal, right? Going back to homeostasis, our bodies have a natural tendency to do that. But what might happen is we might feel like it's a low, right? We just felt all this pleasure, all these great feelings. We're coming back to normal, and now it feels low. In a nutshell, that's why we tend to crave more and more of it. It's no surprise that a lot of people's, vices like alcohol and drugs, they can increase dopamine. Gambling, impulse spending, all of these things have the potential to be associated with addictive behaviors. Not all the time, but there is a connection there. So unfortunately, behaviors like impulse spending can have negative consequences, like harming your financial progress. Something else you should know is that there are things you can do in your lifestyle to increase your baseline of dopamine, and it's all of the healthy things you're already familiar with. Eat a balanced diet, get good sleep, get some sunlight, have some social activities. If you can incorporate more of those things, as well as incorporating habits like the 48-hour rule, you're gonna be well on your way to spending less money, specifically for when spending that money isn't your true intent. All right, last piece on the 48-hour rule, how can you incorporate it? Well, I just think you have to try it. I'm a big believer in taking small steps. So depending on how severe your spending habits are or lack of impulse control, it might be hard to incorporate this rule all the time, all at once, but just start small. The next time you realize you're about to make a purchase and you know that it's not a necessity, then try it one time. See if it works. Maybe try it again next week. The first step is really just being aware of the tools like this rule that are at your disposal so that when you are about to spend on something that you actually don't really want, but you're guided by your impulse, you'll be able to stop it. All right, the next way you can save yourself from yourself is number 2, the fun fund, or simply a flexible bucket in your budget. So you can do this rule in tandem with the 48-hour rule. You can also do it on its own, but here's the concept. In your budget, you're going to create a bucket specifically for fun. It can be a generic flexible bucket that you can use for variable expenses, but why not have one specifically for fun? Based on your income, based on your financial circumstance, you can define how much you want to save in it every month, and you can use it as your dedicated place to pull money from if you choose to buy something discretionary, specifically things that you didn't already plan for. So over the years, I found that even though I was very, very capable of tracking money and budgeting, I just didn't like the rigidity of every single dollar already being accounted for. It felt like there was no room for me being spontaneous, like going to the movies randomly because I had some free time, or buying a new blanket because it seemed to be more chilly this winter and I don't have one at home. Having some flexibility is something I value so much. So what I needed was money that I could spend freely, even though I didn't even know what it was going to be spent for at the time of saving it. So personally, I saved up an amount of $500 that I could either use all at once or use it in bits and pieces. And the key was that anytime I took money from it, I would be motivated to replenish it with my next paycheck. So I always knew I had freedom for smaller purchases and smaller spontaneous things without ruining the rest of my financial progress. So who does the fun fund work best for? Well, if you're like me, and you want to improve your finances, but you hate being controlled, or if you simply like the idea of having flexibility and spontaneity, then this method should be good for you. It's also great for people who tend to get into debt or keep building up more debt due to unplanned spending. I mean, that's the theme of this video. We are talking about things to protect yourself from yourself. So what is the psychology behind this? This is something I remember learning in college as a communications major. In my major, we had to study psychology and interpersonal communication, so I got some exposure to some of this. But think about yourself or anyone else you know growing up who might have had really, really strict parents. For me, that was my mom. Now, how many of your friends who had really, really, really strict parents end up being a goody two-shoes? I'm sure there's some, but more likely than not, for people that I know who had really, really strict parents, it actually influenced them to want to rebel or do the opposite. So there is a thing called reactance theory, which suggests that when an individual perceives their freedom of choice is being restricted, they experience what's called psychological reactance. And this psychological reactance can manifest in a lot of different ways. And one way is rebelling or, like we said, doing the opposite. So if you try to budget over and over again and you don't ever allow yourself some flexibility and some breathing room, if that's something that you value, then you may constantly find yourself breaking the budget, not sticking to it, giving up on it, and then trying later on over again. If that's the case with you, it's all about breaking that cycle. So clearly you don't like the rigidity and you need a little bit of flexibility while still maintaining your budget. So if you think a fun fund is something you want to incorporate, there are so many ways to do it. My favorite is using a budgeting tool that allows you to create categories for various things. And you simply make a category for your fun fund. I use YNAB, You Need a Budget. It's a budgeting tool. I can drop my link in the description if you're interested in checking it out. But some bank accounts, savings accounts, also allow you to have sub-accounts and name those, so you can name them whatever you want. Another method that I personally don't like a lot, and you won't either if you were raised in a neighborhood where you could get robbed for this, story for another day, is the cash envelope method. So some people like to just use cash, put it in an envelope, and use that as their go-to for this flexible bucket. I don't like that because cash can't be insured. So if somebody steals it, if you lose it, it's gone. So for me, it doesn't work. But if it works for you and you feel okay with that risk, then by all means, do what you gotta do. For those new to my channel, welcome. If you are enjoying this video, please hit the like button right now and subscribe if you aren't already, and drop a comment. Let me know what your tips and tricks are when it comes to curbing spending. I think we can all help each other and share our tips. All right, back to the video, on to number 3. The third way to save yourself and from overspending is to unsubscribe. So what I mean by this is online, we are fed so many messages, so many advertisements, even when things aren't advertisements and we see someone using a cool new product, we have temptations that make us want to spend on those things. So if you fall in that bucket where you tend to get influenced by things you see online, just unsubscribe to some things and unfollow some people. According to Statista, the number of emails sent and received per day in 2023 was 347 billion. That's 347 billion emails sent each day. And probably to no surprise to you, a study from SOAKS said that on average, people spend about 143 minutes on social media every day. That is 2.5 hours every day spent scrolling through different platforms. If that's your form of entertainment, fine, enjoy, but just know that if you are unable to curb your temptation when you are exposed to new products, new services, advertisements, then you might want to make a concerted effort to reduce the number of people you follow, reduce the amount of emails you're subscribed to, protect yourself from marketers. So who should unsubscribe or follow brands or people? I would say this is best for those of you who tend to want a lot of discretionary things, for those of you who are easily impressed by advertisements, or those of you who are just quick to pull out their credit card if there's a sale, right? You might end up seeing something you weren't even thinking about buying, but because it's 50% off, all of a sudden you want it. As painful as it might be to miss a sale, guess what? If you're spending money on things that are on sale, but you had no intention of buying that before you saw the sale, like, yes, you are saving money relative to purchasing that thing at full price, but you are not saving money relative to your financial life. You're actually spending money. So from a psychological standpoint, the reason unsubscribing works is what I alluded to earlier. It's how many advertisements we're exposed to. Even when things aren't directly being advertised, we are influenced by product placement, product integrations, or just seeing things. And I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with this. That's the world as it is today. We are exposed to things. I just think that if you specifically struggle behaviorally when it comes to spending, then these are just tips and tricks to help protect yourself. Longer term, I suggest that you do more inner work, you build more self-awareness, and start using those tools to curb bad spending habits. But in the meantime, what we're doing here is we are just adding more tools to our tool belt. We want to trick ourselves into better behaviors. So this one's easy, how to do it. Check your email less, or go on social media less, or some other options. If you don't want to do that and if it's not conducive to the way you operate your life, then you can set up email filters or rules. You can have marketing emails skip your inbox. On social media like Instagram, you can mute accounts. So maybe you don't want to unfollow an account completely, but maybe for a couple months you can mute certain accounts, especially brands and companies that are always trying to sell products or services. All right, number 4, how else are we going to save ourselves from ourselves? Well, you can pay yourself first. If you've never heard of this method, I'm gonna guess you are new to my channel because I must talk about it in like every other video. So I apologize to those of you who are familiar and you've already heard this before. Paying yourself first is the concept of making sure that anytime new money comes your way, that could be your regular paycheck, it could be a windfall. Anytime you get new money coming into your life, you are paying your future you first. So you are saving and you are investing for the future before you even pay your rent or your bills or anything else. So that can sound surprising to some people because for some people it's backwards. Some people are like, all right, I got to pay all the bills. I got to pay the rent, got to pay my phone bill. I got to pay all this. And then if I have some extra money, I'll save it for the future. But what I want you to do here to save yourself from yourself is do the opposite. You want to put aside for future you first. You want to look out for future you first. When you do this, now you're left with the rest of your money that you can decide how to use for your day-to-day life. It protects you in the sense that it's going to prevent you from pushing out your long-term goals and pushing out your wealth building and pushing out saving for retirement or anything in the future. You're going to prioritize that. It's going to be built into your system, and then you're never going to have to worry about it because you know that it's happening. So who is this method for? Personally, I think it's for everyone. It's not just for people with spending problems. I think that it is important for everyone to learn how to prioritize building wealth for the long term. And that can be as simple as this small gesture of prioritizing paying yourself first before others. So within that, I don't know if you noticed, there's a psychological component. Psychologically, what this tells you when you prioritize you and future you first, it tells you in a very subtle way that your future financial security is the utmost priority. It comes first. You give yourself the message that you are important. You're more important than new clothes or giving money to any other person or any other company. You are taking care of you. So here is the easiest way to set it up If you get a paycheck and you're paid regularly, then you can check with your employer and set up a direct deposit. Let's say you already have one going to a checking account. Maybe you add a second direct deposit and have a small amount go directly to a savings account, a high yield savings account. If you don't already have an emergency fund, then that is how you are going to fund your emergency fund. All right, we are on the last method, the last habit, the last way that you're going to save yourself from yourself when it comes to spending. And that is what I have coined the 2x2 rule. The 2x2 rule relates to mindful spending. And like I said, if you've never heard of it before, it's because it's a me thing. It's a Lissa thing that I created, that I follow, and I'm going to share it because I think it can help you too. So think back to earlier in the video. I talked about the 48-hour rule. This is a rule that you can incorporate in your life to curb impulse spending. I think you should incorporate that somehow if you tend to spend impulsively. But I'm very, very aware that that can't work in all situations. What it doesn't help with is when you're presented with a very, very enticing offer, let's say a discount or a sale. So here's the 2x2 rule. If something is on sale, only buy it if it's something you had previously thought about buying in the last 2 months. Or if it's something that you have on your list that you had already planned to buy in the next 2 months. Beyond thinking about it and researching it in the past 2 months or having it on your list to buy in the next 2 months, you weren't thinking about this thing. So I don't care if it's 50% off or 80% off. Leave it alone. You were going to be fine without it in your life. So now, of course, there is also flexibility here because I don't like the rigid rules on myself. So remember number 2 where we were talking about the fun fund? Well, if you have a fun fund or a flexible bucket of money that you set aside that you can use on a whim, then you can actually use that for purchases that maybe fail the 2x2 rule. Maybe your backup to that is, all right, you really want this thing, you see it on sale, and you weren't thinking about it before, but now that you know about it, you really want it, then that's okay. Use your fun fund for it. So this rule is best for people who get swayed into buying things they don't need, and people who love discounts so much that it's sometimes to their own detriment. So the psychology behind this 2x2 rule is simply around spending more mindfully. This means that from a psychological perspective, you are going to be fully aware of each purchase decision that you're making. You're not just going to buy things on a whim because an advertisement told you to. You're going to at least pause to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. You don't have to overthink the purchase, but what you want to do is at least consider what is the value this is going to bring to my life. Because all of us have limited resources, limited money. Building wealth is not about making the most money. It's about making the smartest financial decisions that work in your life. If you can align your purchasing habits with your own personal values, your own goals, your own wants, your own needs, your own long-term wealth goals, then you're going to become a more intentional spender. Incorporating this rule is probably one of the harder ones in this video because it comes down to your awareness and your own sense of self-control. I don't think that the next time you are presented with a sale, you're going to be thinking about me and this 2x2 rule. But in the off chance that you do, and you are able to become aware of that purchase, and if you're able to incorporate some self-control, it might help you save money instead of spending on something you didn't even want. All right, I hope this video was helpful. Until next time, peace out.